Lord is a flying.
Hey guys, how you doing? I'm Rhaj Paul. This is #Tailored. Welcome to this episode. This episode is a special one for me because I get asked a lot to do alterations, and this is one of the most common alterations that come my way. This is the tapering of a long jeans. Now, this jeans that was brought to me by my client is a Levi's 514 straight cut, which means that it's cut pretty straight through the thighs and through the rest of the leg as well. So let's take a look at it. So we want to narrow this to a bottom length that we previously determined we wanted to go to, which is in general for a slim taper about 6.5. Finishing at 6.5 on the bottoms. Right now, this measures 8 inches and we want to come in to 6.5. So it means that we have to take off 1.5 inches going this way. Collectively, that's 3 inches, 1.5 inches in. So the first thing that we have to do is know how much we want to take off, yes, but what we have to do is open up the hem, right? So our tool for doing that is going to be our nipper. So we're going to open up the hem now. We want to turn it out like this, and we want to start with the seam ripper, and where the thread had finished is where we want to start. So the first thing I do, because we want to be careful about this, is break those hems there, break those stitches there. So I just kind of space it about 1/2 inch apart with the breaks. There's another way this could be done, but I prefer this way for cleanness. So the first thing we want to do is turn it over and break those stitches where it starts, because it's kind of doubled up, so it's heavy stitches right there. You want to break that. So once we completed breaking the stitches on the inside, which is really the bobbin thread, once we get that, then we can now turn it back over and pull out this top thread. So once we pulled out that top thread, then we just start to open up the hem itself. We have all these little bits. Those are our threads. Now open it, and those are our brown threads. And what we do now is we start to open up. Right out, flat, both sides. Just get rid of our little threads. Yeah, so once this is done, we open up this hem, we took out the top thread, we took out the bottom thread, then we just repeat this with the second leg. Alright, so since this is a replica of what we did before, we're just going to speed forward through this and we'll get to the next step. So this is both of them open. Now we're on to our second step, which is we turn the jeans inside out and we'll press the bottoms flat so that we have a nice flat surface to work with instead of the folds that are here right now. We'll press that out flat, turn it inside out, and then we'll start making our measurements to where we want to draw our tapering lines. Alright, so now we got a jeans turned inside out and we're trying to lay it as flat as possible. We notice that here is, because there's bend folded, it's just tending to roll up. So we're gonna take the iron and press it out flat so that we have a nice even surface to work with. So let's just get the iron and do that. Alright, so our jeans is now nice and pressed on the inside. The hem is all pressed out flat. The side seam where we're going to be working to do this taper is all pressed flat as well. We have a beautiful surface to draw our lines on that we're going to be stitching. So first thing first, before we even do that, we always must carry a sharp chalk. Some have sharp sharpeners, sometimes I use a blade, and I'll just do like this. This chalk is a little blunt, it's too roundy. The lines are too thick and we want thin, clean lines. So what we do is you take the razor blade. You want to get a corner, crispy, sharp edge right there. Alright, so this line up here is where we're going to start our taper from, coming down here to the hem. Now the thing about this is the way that this jeans fits the client, he has a little room at the top, so we can afford to come in a little bit, just coming off with the hip line, coming into the knee line and coming down to the hem. So what we'll do is we'll measure from here to here to the hem, this part to the hem. It's about 38 inches and halfway between there is 19. Generally speaking, that's around where his knee will fall in the pants. So this line right here. So we got these 3 marks. For most people, about 7 3/4 to 8 around the knee area is sufficient room to feel comfortable and to bring that taper in. So along the knee line, on this line here, we want to come in to about 7 3/4, a little less than 8 for that mark there. So now we got this mark, this mark, this mark. What we do is draw our line from off this hip line from here to here. Here to here. Now we're gonna go from here to here. So we're coming down. Now, what we do to make a smooth transition, now if you notice, this is a straight line to here and this is a straight line to here. But we kind of want to make a gentle transition. So we want to take up about a section, about 6 inches between the 2 lines and make a curve between the 2. So we'll come here with a curve ruler across the 2 lines. Now we bridge, make a bridge between the 2 lines, that one and that one, and fill in that gap right there. So nice transition, right down to the end. Okay. That is our stitch line for our taper. We do the same thing over on the other side, and then we're ready to stitch up. Alright, so you see we got our lines marked. These are the stitch lines that we're going to use to make the taper. We're going to head over to the sewing machine, the straight sawer, and stitch on these lines and get our taper set, and then we'll get to the finishing up from there. Alright, so the first thing that I think we need to consider is the right needle to sew with, and this is very important because according to the thickness of the fabric, we need a heavier needle, we need a bigger needle. So I've chosen, because we're working with denim, I've chosen a size 16. Sometimes I'll do an 18 depending on that denim because it comes in different weights. But according to this one, I think a 16 is a general purpose heavy duty needle. We'll go with that. If you don't have a 16, I recommend an 18, but really not less. Because if the fabric is that thick, at some joints, the needle can break. So let's get our needle in there. Once we got the needle set in position, tighten it off, and then we thread it. Alright, so we set the needle in 16, and we're using a thread that's a little heavier than the normal thread that you might buy. So you have to check around and see what's available. So once you get the thread that will work well, thread it through the machine, put it onto the bobbin as well, and then we put the bobbin into the bobbin case, and we set to go. Pull that thread up from the bottom. We're good to go. But my recommendation before we even start to do this stitching is that we test it on a piece of scrap fabric to make sure that the tension is set right on the top and on the bottom. The tension bottom, of course the bottom tension is on the bobbin, and the top tension is on the machine right here. So I'll just run a piece of fabric just to make sure I like the balance between how the stitches look on the top and how the stitches look on the bottom. You took a denim of similar weight. What we do is we pull it around and then we take a look at it. I say, okay, check the bottom, check the top. It looks pretty balanced. Looks pretty balanced at this point. Alright, now that we have that tension test, we like the results. The bottom and the top are quite even, balanced. Now we're gonna go to our actual stitching, but before that, my recommendation for the stitch count itself is that we use somewhere between the 2 and the 3 mark. I like 2 1/4. So we're gonna use that for a decent stitch length, not too wide, not too tiny. And let's get our jeans and let's get it stitched up. Alright, so we got our jeans stitched up. We use our lengths that we marked out when we stitched on. So we got the taper set. Next step after this, obviously, would be to overlock the side seam. So that's where we're gonna head over to the overlocker and do that next. Let's go. So we're here at the overlocker. I'm going to use a 3-thread overlocker because we have our seam stitching already. And so I have the machine set up with the navy threads just to match the inside. So that we keep it all consistent and beautiful. So here it goes. Let's overlock. So just before starting that overlock stitch, I'm just going to run a test sample to make sure again the overlock is balanced on the top and on the bottom. Make sure that it looks good before we do it on our actual garment. So we just ran our test stitch to see how our overlock is looking, and as you can see, it's looking very clean. The top thread is ending right on the edge, and you can see the overlap happening right there along the edge. That's a beautiful stitch. No off tension. Yeah, back looks good as well, and we're good to go. So our knobs is set right, the tension is set perfect. Replace our fabric in here, and now we want to take a view to maintaining this distance for the allowance coming all the way down as we trim off the excess. I'm using this point right here, all along here, as my guide for my stitch, my seam line, and then the rest will naturally trim off equally as I follow this. So let's go. So it's always a lot of hand-eye coordination to make sure that you have that evenness that you're going for. And it is useful to practice. Alright, so we ran our overlock now, and as you can see, I've maintained quite a nice equal distance from the seam to the edge, from the top all the way to the bottom. So we get to go over to one side and we hit it on the other side. So we finished the second leg, balanced just like the first one, and we're pretty much good to go now. We're gonna just finish it up by hemming. So let's do that. We're back to the straight saw. Alright, so back on the straight saw, and we get into the hem. Now, a lot of jeans use a denim thread, a heavy denim thread for the top stitching. Usually a brown or a khaki or, you know, beige or something. So the first thing I've done is I've observed this thread originally used on the jeans for the seam, for the top stitching and for the hemming. And I've selected a similar thread, a brown thread, a denim thread, heavy, a little heavier than the first thread that we used to finish it off, to finish off the hemming. So I've threaded through. I'm just gonna finish off the thread in the machine, and then we'll get to the hemming. What we're gonna do now is using the original fold lines, fold back our hem. Fold it back and then fold on. And just to help us out to maintain that width that we want, just use a couple of pins. Right. Same on the other side. Pull that. There. Alright, so we're ready to go, but just before we do that, we need to check something, and that's the stitch count. So what we do is we look at a section that's already up from the original manufacturers. So here to here is our inch, and this stitch has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches per inch. And it's important to maintain this, or to be as close to this as possible for the appearance, for that authentic finish. We don't want it to be too tight, more than 6, 7, and 8, and we don't want it to be too small and big white stitches. So this is what we're gonna use. This is our guide, 6 stitches per inch. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do the same thing or get as close to it as possible. So we'll use our scrap again to do those two things. We'll check the stitch length as well as the tension to make sure the top and bottom look good. So when we check that, we see that within this inch, from here to here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and almost 9. So that means that we need to increase, so we'll increase the stitch length to 3 3/4 now, and test it again and see where it lands. So now that we have our stitch count set, we're gonna go straight into the hem. Alright, so you notice where we're gonna start and finish is right here on the inseam. The inseam will be the seam, generally speaking, is that inside seam of the leg where it has the double stitching. So we're gonna start there, go right around, and finish back there. Alright, let's get it. Alright, so we set it up. That's why I got those lines there for guides. But in this case, we're really just going over what we took out. So we just really want to stitch along that same line that we have there. And again, as we approach the seam hump, I'll take out this. When it gets right to the top, I will make sure to press. Okay. Make sure to press the foot down here with this finger. It doesn't look like it, but I'm pressing it down real hard so that it maintains that nice tension. It doesn't drop the stitch. Which not only weakens the garment, but also looks terrible. Looks great on the outside. Just where we started, we finished back there. And we've gone over our humps real good. Let's get the other one. Alright, so we're in the last stage right now. We already did our taper. We already did our hem. Now to give it the last touch to make sure that it has that real authentic feel to it. You need to press that hem, that new seam line down. You will notice that before we press, it has a very sort of like obviousness about it, like, oh, something happened there. And what we want to do is we want to reduce that look. We want to make it look like it was bought from the store with an authentic press seam here. It has a nice finish. So there we go. You know, the whole point is that it's just such a different finish when that seam is pressed flat than when it's rounding, you know? The flatter the finish, just the cleaner the line appears to be, the more authentic it is on finish. So that's what we take our time to do this part. Over time, as it's worn and it's washed, it's gonna set in like super good. It's gonna really set itself in and it's gonna be good to go. But just to start off, because you know when the client picks it up, when my client picks it up, it's gonna want to wear it pretty much right away. It still has to look like real good from the start. Alright, so we got our seam pressed down, super flat. We got our hemline nice and even, just like when it started. Looking good under there. See a little bit of stragglers there that could get a little, you know, want that to finish good. Looks beautiful, man. Same thing here. Nice, flat, really set in. Hem is looking good. It's looking beautiful, nice and even right around. Good stitch, a good stitch count. Finish nice. Yeah, we're good to go, man. That's it. So let's take a look at it ultimately in the end. Alright guys, so that brings us to the end of our alteration video where we taper the jeans, a full taper from hip straight to hem, bringing it from a straight leg into I'd say a slim cut, right? Because it could get skinny, but slim cut, so we're good to go. My client, I believe, will be very pleased and comes and fits it and tries it on. At that point, we'll see if there's anything more needs to happen, but I suspect that this is good to go. It's going to be very happy. So this is #Tailored with Rhaj. We just did an alteration for this episode. Thank you for joining us. I hope it's been informative and instructional. I hope it improves what you do, and if you don't know how to do it, it was a way of helping you get into it. Thank you so much, and we'll see you.